Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's begin. 30 Chapter 1 The Return of Itachi Summary. Exactly as the title says. Someone finds Itachi's remains and start experimenting. It all ends in Itachi coming back to life and he's about to take the shinobi world by the storm. At least Sasuke will be happy, especially when his Ni-san starts playing matchmaker.
Hello again. Here is another short story. This will be 3-4 chapters tops. It happens after Kabuto tries to get Tobi to hand over Sasuke for experimentation. We'll go by the guess that Kabuto stole Itachi's body and experimented further with the revival technique, ending up with Itachi alive and killing him. Kisame is still alive and decides to make Sasuke carry out Itachi's will by dragging Sasuke back home. I won't say any more, so please read to find out what happens. Also, Sasuke knows the truth about Itachi, so this might be a bit of a tear-jerker. Kabuto could not believe his own luck. He wasn't sure if he was the luckiest bastard out there or if he was the unluckiest individual in the universe as he hid behind one of the giant snakes he had summoned that was about to be killed. He should have known all his plans on succeeding where Orochimaru had failed would backfire. But he had thought that the biggest obstacles were crushed into the ground, by Uchiha Sasuke no less, yet it would seem he has been wrong. Orochimaru had planned on getting the Sharingan for years before actually daring to try and take over an Uchiha. Too bad for him, but his former master had chosen Uchiha Itachi as his target and that man was almost unbeatable, if his reputation was to be believed. Kabuto blamed Orochimaru for this whole mess, despite the Sannin being dead for a few months now. It really was all his fault, as Kabuto's troubles were always revolving around him. He could all trace it back to the day when Sasori of the Red Sands sent him to Orochimaru to become his spy on the Sannin, back when they were still both part of the mercenary ninja organization called Akatsuki. Orochimaru hadn't taken long to see Kabuto was under Sasori's jutsu and the talent Kabuto had for healing ninjutsu, so he had freed Kabuto of Sasori's influences and had taken in Kabuto as his own. Kabuto had resented him for a long while because of that but had accepted it and became truly loyal to the Snake Sannin. Before he knew it, Orochimaru was obsessed with Uchiha Itachi and his master and mentor was getting his hand cut off by the genius. Kabuto had never seen Orochimaru so petrified in as long as he knew the sickly pale man. They were in hiding for a couple of years before Orochimaru had decided to go after the younger of the two last remaining Uchihas, so Kabuto found himself being a spy in Konoha and then entering the Chunin exams. Meeting Sasuke-kun, Naruto-kun and Sakura-san, getting beatings as the weak guy, killing lots and lots of other genin because he was bored, making friends with the Uchiha and the Kyuubi vessel and then dropping out of the exams, just to lead the attack known as Konoha Crush a month later, during the final stage of the exams. The Sandaime Hokage ended up sealing away Orochimaru's arms and jutsus, so they had to retreat. And before he knew it, there was that fight between the three legendary Sannin and Naruto-kun with that blasted Rasengan of his, and he and Orochimaru had to run again. However, things had seemed to be looking up when Sasuke-kun came to Orochimaru-sama willingly, even though there was some manipulation involved. And that's when things became difficult. For 3 years, Orochimaru and Kabuto had to endure the young Uchiha's increasingly mad moods, and as the boy grew into a man and he became stronger, they only got worse. There were even a few instances where Orochimaru himself had been tempted to slit Saduk-kun's throat, but the teen had already grown too strong for Orochimaru to subdue so easily. In fact, Orochimaru had expressed a concern that, should Sasuke ever catch him in a genjutsu with his Sharingan, the Snake Sannin wouldn't be able to escape it without cutting off a limb, so he could achieve a high enough level of pain to escape it and come back into reality. Kabuto had lived on eggshells for 3 years, especially the last few months. Sasuke's mood had gotten far worse after he had that little reunion with his old teammates. To think that they would kill Sasori and then think up the plan to kidnap his inside man, in order to gain information on Orochimaru's plans and whereabouts. Quite cunning, really. Konoha had certainly benefited from the old man's death a few years back. Kabuto hated to admitting that Naruto-kun had scared him when he used his Jinchuriki powers. Who wouldn't be scared, when he had so easily defeated a Sannin like Orochimaru? Although, the pale man had had to flee in order to stay alive. Then they were approached by that guy, Sai, a part of Danzo's route. He supposedly had a message for the Otokage and they had foolishly let him come along, only to be followed by Naruto and his team, one of whom was one of Orochimaru-sama's old projects that Danzo took over and completed. They did manage to find the hideout and even enter it, then they had some sickening moment or something and Sai seemingly took their side instead of Danzo's and they went to search for Sasuke. They had obviously found the Uchiha, judging from the boom and the almost battle that took place. Orochimaru and Kabuto had to stop the Uchiha from fighting them seriously and they left, but the brief encounter with his old teammates left Sasuke in a foul mood and it showed. The gray-haired young man had caught him muttering things about idiots and replacements but he had never paid it any mind, let alone confronted him about it, especially as his temper seemed to be getting worse and worse with each day. Kabuto had honestly thought that Sasuke would murder them all after that day. His mood swings got so unpredictable and violent that everyone started avoiding the boy. Someone had even suggested sending Sasuke out to take over a few ninja villages all on his own, just to get the tension out of himself. Another, far dumber follower had said that they should send out someone to kill the Uzumaki so that Sasuke's temper will settle a little. That idiot didn't even live long enough to finish his suggestion, as the Uchiha had heard and resented the idea that the blonde could affect him so much. Or he simply didn't like someone implying such a thing. Or he didn't approve of the suggestion. Orochimaru and Kabuto had been discussing it until a few days before Sasuke killed the snake Sannin. They had been discussing how Orochimaru will first test out the Uchiha body he will be gaining and how to make sure that they completely kill Sasuke's consciousness so that he may never find out. Orochimaru had absolutely no intentions of ever facing Itachi of all people, ever again despite the promise he made to the younger Uchiha. Kabuto had, of course, jumped at the opportunity presented before him and absorbed all of Orochimaru's remaining powers before setting on the move. He never stayed in one place for too long and he made no more allegiances or accepted any in return. He became a loner and traveled, seeking ways to outdo his former master. And that's how he stumbled upon the news that Sasuke was now aligned with Akatsuki of all people, seeking revenge for Itachi. Kabuto had been confused, as he had heard that Sasuke had accomplished his ambition by killing his older brother with his own hands, but here he was now, seeking revenge against Konoha and all others who had somehow wronged Itachi. Kabuto may not have known what was going on, but he had seen a golden opportunity in all of this. So he had sought out the new leader of the Akatsuki, a man who claimed to be none other than an immortal Uchiha Madara, one of the founders of Konoha and one of the most powerful Uchiha and shinobi in history, intending to bargain for Sasuke for experimentation on the powers of the Sharingan and ways to stop the blindness from taking his eyes, but that's where he met another new obstacle. Madara, as suspected, wasn't the real Madara and he needed Sasuke because he was strong, the only one strong enough and angry enough with Konoha to fight Naruto, the Kyabe's Jinchuriki. He wasn't giving away Sasuke, and although he wasn't Madara, he was still strong enough to chase Kabuto away. But he had made the fatal mistake of thinking that Kabuto would give up so easily. He now knew where their HQ was and he had gladly sneaked in, risking his life and skin to find the Uchiha. Only he hadn't found Sasuke, but rather Itachi, much to his surprise. Knowing he'll never get a chance like this again, Kabuto had took the older brother's body and fled, hoping he will be the first person ever to unlock the secrets of the glorious Uchiha bloodline and their Kekkei Genkai. That must have been where whatever little luck he had ended, the moment he started experimenting on the Uchiha's body in hopes of reviving the body and using it as his new vessel. It would be an achievement Orochimaru had only ever dreamed of and Kabuto felt smug that he'll succeed where his master failed. Of course, he had never expected for Itachi's body to be so resistant to revival jutsus. So he had to spend a week investigating the reasons why and that's when he found that, apparently, Itachi wasn't killed by Sasuke, despite what the wounds he had when Kabuto started healing him would suggest, but rather by a vicious disease that had no material cure and none of the Akatsuki knew healing ninjutsus, so the elder Uchiha had lived as long as he had on pure stubbornness and force of will alone. Who would have thought that someone who has been described as perfect his whole life would have such an imperfect ending? But Kabuto found that now that the disease's host was dead, it had died too, or was burned into nothingness by the Kirin, and all that was left to do was repair the damage it had done over the course of its existence in Itachi's body. The gray-haired young man had with great glee and eagerness set to work, almost already feeling the powers the Uchiha genius's body would give him. And then he, much to his greatest frustration, found out that Itachi's eyes were missing. It would seem that Tobi, the so-called Madara, had transplanted Itachi's eyes to Sasuke at the younger Raven's request. Kabuto was tempted to take his scalpel to Itachi's body and completely destroy it in his anger, so many days spent repairing the damn corpse. But he resisted the urge. Instead, he did a bit more research and had to stifle the urge again when he found out that Uchiha eyes couldn't be returned by revival techniques. So instead, Kabuto decided to risk it all once again and try to sneak into Toba's lair once more. He had been able to very easily summon Uchiha Madara's corpse there, so he had a suspicion that Tobi had plans for the great Uchiha. Too bad for him that Kabuto did, too. More specifically, he had plans for Madara's eyes. He was going to make his vessel the ultimate body, and for that, he doubted Madara would suffice. He has been defeated, after all, while Itachi remains as unbeatable, even when deathly sick. The man had just finally succumbed to his illness, which was a long time coming. With Madara's eyes, Itachi was bound to be unbeatable, and since it will be Kabuto who is in the body, Kabuto will be unbeatable. And it hadn't even been all that hard, either. It was actually kind of pathetic how easily he made it to the room holding a few bodies. There was the body of some young girl, 12 to 14 years old, that Kabuto couldn't see anything special about, and stole Uchiha Madara's eyes. No one even noticed. In fact, it would seem that no one had even noticed that he had stolen Itachi's body, and that had been weeks ago. Of course, he knew Sasuke was out on Akatsuki missions with his team Taka that he formed right after killing Orochimaru, using the organization to get the support he needed for a campaign like killing Danzo required. If the last Uchiha was still sticking around, Kabuto knew he would have been dead already. Still, he had gotten the eye, he had healed Itachi's body, and he had found the things he needed to revive the body. In his research, however, he had found that Uchiha bodies were generally hard to revive for reasons not mentioned, so they were in need of stronger jutsus and more chakra. And so, Kabuto had found a few great sources of chakra, since he doubted there was a stronger reviving jutsu than the Edo Tensei, his new and greatly improved version of it, that is. He just had to make sure that the jutsu wasn't completely finished, or else Itachi's soul will return to his body and all hell could break loose. And that's when Kabuto really got screwed, because something important for the transfer had fallen and he had looked over, cursing and distracted, not even noticing that he had held the jutsu too long, and the next time he looked back to the Uchiha's body, he was met with open coal-black eyes. Before he could even begin cursing himself, the eyes bled red, and then a red chakra giant was hovering over Itachi and flinging him against the far wall of his cave that he used as a lair. And that brought him where he was now, hiding behind his last snake. Weech just got killed. Kabuto scrambled to his feet, intent on escaping, but it would seem that Itachi wasn't going to let that happen. And all his strength returned. It really was a bad idea to give him Madara's eyes. Red eyes peered down at the gray-haired individual, the fully developed Susanoo acting as Itachi's guard and shield and sword all at the same time, making it impossible for Kabuto to deliver a single attack. He had heard about the powers of Itachi's Susanoo from Zetsu as he was delivering a report to that Madara wannabe after the fight. He had been observing them for quite some time and had only a little bit later decided to confront them, and he knew he didn't stand a chance against it. Especially not when Itachi was once again fully healthy and he had not just the Mangekyo Sharingan, or even the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Itachi now had Madara's Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, a double Eternal right there. Kabuto decided he really did have the worst luck in the entire world. Itachi-kun. A black eyebrow arched elegantly. Kabuto-kun, I would like to inquire as to why you felt the need to disturb my final rest. The snake sage gulped uneasily. You see, I believed Sasuke-kun to be in danger and that he could use his elder brother's help. So I perfected the revival technique so I could bring you back and you could. Cut the crap, I've heard enough of it while I was with the Akatsuki. Kabuto gaped at the annoyance so clearly shown in both tone and face. This was probably the first time he had heard Itachi expressing himself in such a way. The man had always been as polite as they come, never cursing, not that he had ever had a need to, never cutting someone off, and never, ever openly showing his annoyance or displeasure. Then again, no one had ever been able to lie to him, and Kabuto had just lied to him in regards to Sasuke. He might have just crossed the last line. How much has passed since I have died? And Kabuto had to admire the way he was talking about his own death so casually, as if dying and being revived was an everyday occurrence. Well, to Hidan it had been, but Itachi was no Hidan. The man had probably never received a single blow in his life until he had fought Sasuke, let alone been close to dying. That is, if you don't count his illness. A few months. Sasuke-kun has been devastated when he found out the truth behind your actions, though, and I must say, he is even more determined to destroy Konoha than he had been to kill you. He killed Danzo not long ago and has joined Akatsuki when Madara told him everything that happened. Itachi looked at him as though he was crazy. Uchiha Madara has been dead for decades. You must mean Tobi. Kabuto nodded and Itachi sighed. As for Sasuke, you have nothing to worry about. I will find my Ototo, but you will not see the day when we stand together to protect Konoha. Wah! Kabuto was cut off by coughing up his own blood when the Suzanu's sword, the sword F Tatsuka, stabbed right through him. He could feel as he was slowly sealed away, seeing a jar appear in the elder Uchiha's hand, a white snake manifesting itself as Kabuto's soul. He looked into Sharingan red eyes and saw no pity or satisfaction in them as everything turned black. Itachi stared down at the jar in his hand, not even flinching when black flames consumed it. He was surprised, though, when he realized he felt no discomfort in using Sasunu and the lack of a sting in his eyes from using his Amaterasu. He lifted a hand to his face and felt no bloody tears rolling down his cheeks. Whatever Kabuto has done to his body, Itachi could tell that he was in a better condition than he had been for quite a few years now. And then what the now dead man had said rang through his head and Itachi clenched his hands into fists. Just you wait, Sasuke. Ni-san is coming to get you. 30 Chapter 2, The Return of Itachi. Summary. Exactly as the title says. Someone finds Itachi's remains and start experimenting. It all ends in Itachi coming back to life and he's about to take the shinobi world by the storm. At least Sasuke will be happy, especially when his Ni-san starts playing matchmaker. Shut up, you weird Sasuke stalker. An albino boy yelled at a redhead girl his own age as they and two other boys calmly walked down a road that led through the forest one nice sunny afternoon. You make me sick just by looking at you, Karen. What did you just say, fish boy? The teenage girl, Karen, yelled indignantly, her levels of anger rising by the second as she argued with the pale, white-haired boy with purple eyes and unnaturally sharp teeth. I dare you to say it again, Suigetsu. Gladly, bitch. And they just started arguing louder, so loudly that their observer wondered how they hadn't alerted every ninja in the world that Uchiha Sasuke, the last of his prestigious clan and missing ninja, was right under their noses. For the dark-haired boy of the group, obviously their leader, was none other than Sasuke, and the observer knew this was probably his best chance to snatch him up. Hoshigaki Kisame made sure to repress his chakra as much as he could as he watched the group of four that have just recently joined Akatsuki. He didn't know the extent of his late partner's little brother's abilities, but he was not going to underestimate the boy. He had made that mistake with Itachi-san, once upon a time, and he had been left gawking like an idiot after seeing the Uchiha fight for the first time. He had no intentions of looking like a fool for the second time in front of an Uchiha. Besides, what he was here to do was probably not something the last Uchiha would agree with, as Kisame planned on dragging the boy back to his home village, as Itachi-san would have wanted. And Kisame knew that Sasuke had no plans of returning to Konoha, rather he wanted to destroy it to avenge Itachi-san's many sacrifices and hardships over the years. While Kisame would just love to join him in on that, he knew that it wouldn't make Itachi-san happy if he did. And the last thing Kisame wanted to do was to disappoint or upset Itachi. Even in death. Kisame and Itik have been partners since the younger was 14, a year after he had first joined Akatsuki. Kisame hadn't believed that this boy standing before him was the one feared by all of his generation, the greatest shinobi Konohagakure had, apparently, produced since the Yondaime Hokage. That is, as he had said before, until he saw the Uchiha fight. It still took him a long time for him to get used to the idea that, despite how young and fragile Itachi appeared on the surface, he didn't need Kisami's protection. Itachi was an unmatched genius with greater skill and intelligence that Kisame doubted anyone had ever had. He was also the kindest soul Kisame had ever encountered, but people often overlooked that as all they saw was the clan killer. What they also failed to notice was that Itachi-san was also the most damaged, especially by what he had done. By leaving his little brother behind to hate and resent him for the only way he could save the then 8-year-old boy. Oh, yes, Kisame knew about the truth behind the massacre of the Uchiha clan. A clan of over 50 members of all ages slaughtered in one night by one individual. The only survivor was Uchiha Sasuke, the youngest member of the main house and the little brother of the murderer. That what everyone knew. What no one but a select few knew was that the massacre was in order and that his exile from the village was signed and announced before the first Uchiha fell. What no one knew is that the Uchiha clan had been planning a coup against the Hokage and that a war was brewing. What no one knew was that it was the only way Sasuke, and through the two of them the centuries-old Uchiha clan, could survive. What no one realized was that his little brother's hatred was nearly enough to break the strong man Itachi was. But Itachi-san was used to the pressure, Kisame knew that. Being the genius he was, a lot was expected from him from a very young age. Most would stumble under it, but Itachi-san was completely unaware of it until he learned of the planning of the coup. He had said that he had never felt that pressure and Kisame had the impression that the Raven was so good that there was no need for him to feel the pressure. He met and exceeded expectations as easily as he breathed, and with how focused he had been in his training and studies, he had never noticed them until his father stated that with Itachi at his side, he could deal with both the rest of the clan and the council. Kisame often wondered if that was actually what made the decision for Itachi-san, other than his desire to keep Sasuke safe. The elder Uchiha brother never talked about that aspect of the true story behind the massacre, so Kisame didn't pry. He respected his partner too much to force a conversation that would make Itachi-san uncomfortable. That, and he didn't want his mind tattered in pieces if the raven-haired teen decided Kisame was too bothersome to keep around. Besides, Kisame sort of didn't want Itachi suffering as much as he was already, because he might have an infatuation with him. But that's not the point. It was, however, one of the reasons why he had set off on this self-appointed mission to drag Sasuke back to Konoha. Itachi had always wanted his brother to become a hero, to change the Uchiha clan's bloody reputation, yet he had become a criminal and Itachi had blamed himself. Kisame knew that the last thing he could do for his deceased partner would be to make Sasuke live out Itachi's legacy by protecting his home village. Now, he could easily kidnap Sasuke. The tricky part was getting him to willingly protect and fight for Konoha after everything Itachi went through. Kisame knew telling him stories of his brother will only fuel the flame of hatred currently burning in the last Uchiha's soul, so he knew that he will have to employ a more subtle approach. Which was going to be hard, as Kisame wasn't the type of person for scheming and manipulation and Sasuke was bound to be as smart as Itachi. So Kisame had decided to risk it all and place everything on the one card he knew to be a sensitive subject to the teen in hopes of somehow convincing him to at least think about going home. He wasn't even sure how he would bring up the topic, and that had made him doubt the approach, until he realized where the group were heading. They were going back to his own home country, towards the land of the waves, where he knew Zabuza had perished 3 years ago during the finishing stages of the construction of the newest and most magnificent bridge his home country had ever had the honor of having. He also knew that that bridge was a big tourist attraction and that most wondered why it was named after a food topping. He also knew that Sasuke's ex-team had went there for a mission 3 years ago, too. Kisame was glad that he had found a subtle way to bring up the much-needed topic into the conversation when he finally reveals himself to the group. Say, Sasuke, why exactly are we going back there again? Suigetsu asked, bringing Kisame out of his thoughts and memories and back into the here and now. I mean, sure, we needed to so I could get Zabuza-senpai's sword last time, but I don't see the need to now. As far as you're concerned, Suigetsu, we're going there because Sasuke, the name was sighed dreamily and Kisame curled his lips in disgust. He was sure the above-mentioned raven was feeling at the dramatic way the girl said Sasuke's name. Really, the Uchiha and their fangirls said we're going. Actually, I'm a bit curious, too. The biggest teen in their group, the one with the orange hair, added, and the girl pouted at being outnumbered. Usually Jugo kept silent and Karen took that as her support in defending Sasuke from Sujitsu's annoying questions. Not that the Uchiha needed any protection whatsoever, just that she was an obsessive fangirl who wanted to be noticed and regarded as useful by the handsome boy. That is, if you don't mind. Jugo finished politely and Kisame resisted the urge to roll his eyes. He found overly polite people boring, except if it was Itachi-san, because politeness just added to his already infinite charms. Sasuke darted his black eyes to his companions and Kisame wondered if he should forget trying to manipulate the boy into going back to Konoha willingly or just throw him over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes when he saw those dark eyes. Now, call his stalker-ish all you want, but Kisame had stared into his partner's eyes for 7 years and he could tell them apart from any other eyes in the world. It would seem that Sasuke had problems with his own eyes and had taken Itachi's to restore his eyesight. Itachi was probably happy that he was now a part of Sasuke's strength, but Kisame wasn't. He had actually had plans of stealing Itachi's body and giving his deceased partner a funeral worthy of him, instead of allowing Tobi to do with it as he pleased. It would seem that he was too late and that the tinkering with the body had begun, although Sasuke was probably the only one who deserved his brother's eyes. Not in the sense that he had somehow earned them, but because that's what Itachi would have wanted. Today is the anniversary of Zabuza's and Haku's death. I wanted to pay respects to them now that we have the free time, and I wasn't going to show up in front of his grave without his sword. Everyone blinked at his answer before Suigetsu scowled fiercely and went to grab the handle of his sword, but Sasuke's next words stopped him. You'll keep the sword. I just want it to be there for the hour or so we will be there. A sign of respect, if you wish. Did you meet this guy, Sasuke? Karen asked as the trees around them started being fewer and fewer, obviously approaching the shores and the sea. It won't be long now, maybe a couple of minutes, before they reach the water. Did you know him? I fought him as a genin. The raven-haired boy replied in a bland tone of voice. It was my first mission outside of Konoha. We were to escort and guard a bridge builder from Konoha to the land of the waves. It was supposed to be an easy C-class mission, but it ended up being S-class, and Zabuza and Haku were one of our opponents. The group was gawking at the pale boy, probably because this was the longest they have ever heard Sasuke speak since they met him. Kisame wasn't surprised. Uchihas were like that. They don't speak nearly as often as other, more normal people do, but when they do, it's either short and to the point or long and either pointed or cryptic. His first conversation with Itachi was highly philosophical and Kisame doubted he would ever forget it. Not that he'd forget any of their conversations, but that, once again, wasn't the point. So why do you suddenly feel the need to go back there and pay your respects? The last part of the question sounded ironic as Suigetsu said it, but Sasuke never answered the question, and soon enough, the bridge was in sight. Suigetsu let out a whistle as the other two members of Team Taka marveled at the beauty of the construction. Wow, just as impressive as the last time, but somehow, more, I guess. The albino said with a big grin that showed off his sharp teeth and with a twinkle in his purple eyes. The Great Naruto Bridge, huh? Still don't get the name, though. Yeah, who would name such a beautiful bridge after a ramen topping? Karen, for the first time ever, agreed with Suigetsu, and Juge had to agree, as well. It was so well kept and obviously treasured and cared for that it was clear it was a big deal to the people here. The tall boy turned towards Sasuke to ask him about his mission from 3 years ago when he noticed the absent look in his eyes and the small, almost invisible smile on his face that wrenched and tugged at Jugo's heart. It was almost heartbreaking, that sad yet happy smile full of memories Sasuke will never share with them, and it was probably the most emotion Sasuke has ever shown in their presence that didn't involve hatred, impatience or anger. In fact, it looked almost wistful, and with such an expression on his young face, Kisame could almost understand Itachi's unconditional love for his little brother. Kisame decided it might as well be the best time to have this little confrontation done and over with, so he stealthily jumped out of his hiding and landed noiselessly behind the group. They were so taken in by the bridge that they didn't notice him until he spoke up. I agree. Such a shame for such a magnificent structure that represents these people's hope and freedom. What a waste. In a flash, Sasuke wiped around, Sharingan already blazing and Kusanagi drawn in a second. Suigetsu followed swiftly by drawing the Kubikiribocho and glaring at the blue shark man. Kisame grinned at them and the other two prepared for a fight, too, but the elder made no move to draw his Samahata. Suigetsu, as it suited his nature quite nicely, was the first to speak up. What are you doing here, bastard? Finally come to your senses and are to hand over that sword of yours. I always knew you were a smart man, Kisame-senpai. Kisame chuckled, unintentionally sounding sinister and mocking. It just seemed to rail the teens up a bit more. He studied their black robes with the red clouds and shook his head. I see you guys got mixed up with the wrong crowd. So disappointing for the future generations. State your business, Sasuke commanded coldly, and the glare on his face once again reminded Kisame of Itachi. Then again, those were his eyes, and the two brothers had a very close resemblance towards each other. Kisame shook those thoughts off before he really started comparing the two and lost focus as to why he was here. I just wanted to have a chat with you. Imagine my surprise when I saw you here of all places. Those dark eyes narrowed further, but it was Jugo who spoke up next. You were following us. It was a statement and not a question, and Karen looked bewildered for a moment. But how didn't I notice his presence? The redhead muttered to herself. I'm sure I would have sensed him. Not with the Semihade you wouldn't. Suigetsu said in a growl. It can absorb chakra on contact, and as its wielder, he can temporarily transfer most of his chakra into it so he could fully hide his presence. Then he can take all that chakra back and fight as if he had never hid it away. Oh, you really do know a lot about our swords. The swords of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. Kisame commented happily, rather impressed. Suigetsu puffed up his chest in pride, but everyone ignored his as the Uchiha spoke again. What would you want to talk about with us? Kisame shrugged, knowing it would annoy the boy. More specifically, I want to talk to you. The Uchiha just arched a black eyebrow, and Kisame knew it meant for him to go on. About returning to Konohagakure. The glare was immediate. Then fuck off. Now, don't be so hasty. There's no need for such foul words when the conversation hasn't even started yet. The blue man said with a tisk. Just hear me out before you tell me to leave. No, Kisame sighed. He knew Sasuke would be difficult, but he had never expected him to be this difficult. Or stubborn for that matter. Just listen. When he saw that Sasuke had opened his mouth to once again tell him to shove it, Kisame used the advantage of his chatty personality to speak faster than the unsocial Uchiha. It's about Itachi-san. Sasuke's mouth slammed shut with a loud smack of teeth that had his team wincing in sympathy. If possible, the glare turned colder and more dangerous. What about my Ni-san? Oh, so now it's Ni-san. Couldn't he have said it to Itachi-san while he was still alive? It would have meant the world to him. Kisame couldn't help but fume for a second before calming down and looking seriously at Sasuke. I heard you joined the Akatsuki so you would have revenge on Konoha for all he went through. Yes, and I started with Danzo and don't plan on stopping any time soon until every last one of them pays for the suffering they have brought upon the both of us. Was the immediate reply with a cold, dangerous-sounding growl in the teenager's voice. Kisame wasn't scared. He had seen Itachi-san looking and heard him sounding scarier even without the glare and the growl. Although he would acknowledge that the last Uchiha had mastered the infamous Uchiha death glare quite well. Do you honestly think Itachi-san would want you to do that? To seek vengeance against the village he had sacrificed almost as much for as he had for you in order to protect you and it? He saw the raven-haired young man flinch, and he knew he was going right about this. Would he really want you to waste your life in vengeance and hate? I'm sure Itachi-san wouldn't want you to be so lonely. Sasuke isn't alone, he has us with him always. Karen interjected while Kisame noted the tightening of Sasuke's grip on his katana. Something in what he had said had hit a nerve, and he had to wonder at what. It would seem that he will have to dig around a bit more to get more of a reaction out of him. Being alone and being lonely are two very different things, Kisame calmly stated as he glanced at the redhead. I imagine that, as an Uchiha, Sasuke hasn't been ever without adoring fans at his heels, yet he was still lonely. There was no connection, no bonds between him and them. I don't need bonds, the genius growled out, his glare becoming sharper, his eyes almost angry slits as he frowned at the shark man. I severed any I have formed when I left Konoha. Kisame couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at this. Oh, all your bonds. Even with that blonde you ran kilometers for 3 years ago when you learned Itachi-san and I were targeting him. Those red eyes widened for a second and Kisame knew he had the Uchiha snared. But he was glaring again not a second later, and the oldest participant of this conversation was beginning to wonder just how mulishly stubborn this guy was. I ran all that way because I heard Itachi was there and wanted to fight him. Right, so you were just craving ramen and that's why you shouted out for Naruto's when you first arrived at the scene. The missing ninja said with an eye roll, enjoying the flare of pink that stretched across the usually stoic boy's cheeks. I may not be a genius or the sharpest kunai in the pouch, but I'm not stupid, brat. Isn't he still chasing after you? Something tells me those bonds aren't quite as severed as you would like to think they are. He's an idiot still clinging to something that has been long gone for 3 years already. The other retorted, but Kisame had him cornered. So you were smiling at this bridge's name like an idiot with a crush for some other reason than it being named after your friend. Sorry, my bad, then. He said with a grin, and something unbelievable happened. Uchiha Sasuke's jaw dropped to the ground at the very accurate observation, his cheeks slowly turning as red as the tomatoes he loved so much. There was a long stretch of awkward silence before Suigetsu broke it with a rather incredulous voice befitting the stupidity of his question. Wait, someone would actually name their kid after a ramen topping? Yeah, Uzumaki Naruto, the hero of that village on the other side of the bridge, little Sasuke-chan's ex-teammate and best friend. Kisame said with a smirk, and Team Taka turned to look at their suddenly very flustered leader. Shut up. What does that Yujiro Tonkachi have anything to do with this conversation, anyway? Kisame grinned wider. You didn't deny him being your best friend. He all but sing-songed and the Uchiha started sputtering uncharacteristically. And he has a lot to do with it. Why don't you just let him drag you back home? Because I have no home to belong to. The reply came in a cold voice, Sasuke sobering up in a second. Kisame waved him off. Sure you do. That blondie's been chasing and searching for you for 3 years and a lot of other Konoha shinobi have followed after him. It'll be a rough transition, but I'm sure you'll be welcomed back soon after you actually return of your free will. The Hokage isn't the same one that ordered Itachi to do it, and I'm sure she'll be more understanding since you have your best friend on your side. I've heard she's quite fond of him. I still don't have a home to return to. Sasuke countered with a frown, but there was no more fight in his voice. All of my family is dead, including Itachi. I have tried, several times in fact, to kill my former teammates and fellow Leaf Shinobi. I've left my village and killed Danzo, who had been Hokage, no matter how briefly. I have tried to kill Naruto, so who would accept me back? Naruto-kun, as Itachi-san called him. Kisame said right off the bat, and Sasuke's head snapped up. Itachi-san once had an interesting conversation with your blondie about Konoha and you and what he would do. Itachi-san had already taken a liking to him since he was your first friend, but his answer got Itachi-san to like him even more. The proof of that is that Itachi-san has hidden one special crow inside the kid as a measure against you, should you decide to attack Konoha. It's supposed to subtly suggest for you to protect Konoha or something along those lines. I don't really understand it. But as you can see, Itachi-san didn't want you to fight against Konoha or seek revenge. I think it's time you actually fulfilled his will, Sasuke. I think he deserves that much. The Uchiha dejectedly lowered his head, his fists white and trembling from how hard he was clenching them. Time for the killing blow. Besides, don't you think you owe it to your friend, too? Sasuke's head snapped up again so fast Kisame wondered how he didn't get a whiplash from it. I'm sure Naruto-kun would be very happy to have you back, and after all you've undoubtedly put him through, I think you owe him some happy, carefree times. There was a long stretch of silence that was finally broken by the sound of Sasuke's sigh and the sliding of the kusanage back into its sheath. Team Taka turned to look towards their leader, who had turned around to stare at a spot somewhere on the middle of the great Naruto bridge. If someone were to kneel by the point where his gaze was fixed, they would find several puncture holes and scratches the size of needles, the only imperfection on the bridge that no one had fixed due to not noticing it. Those little indents meant nothing to anyone else, but to Sasuke and a certain blonde loudmouth ninja, they might as well mean the world to them. Sasuke? Karen asked tentatively, and with a sigh, the mentioned boy turned around to look at the redhead. She and the two boys he had been traveling with for a few months now were looking at him expectantly, and he saw that whatever his decision may be, they were going to follow him through it. He finally looked over at his brother's Akatsuki partner and locked eyes with him. For a moment, they just stared at each other, acknowledging that both have had an important place in Itachi's life and that each held some of the older Uchiha's story in their hands and hearts. Maybe together, they could tell the whole story so Itachi's memory won't ever fade. But they could do that later. For now, let's go, then. Kisame grinned and Team Taka smiled. For now they had a not-so-long journey in front of them and a lot of apologies to prepare. 30 Chapter 3. The Return of Itachi. Summary. Exactly as the title says. Someone finds Itachi's remains and start experimenting. It all ends in Itachi coming back to life, and he's about to take the shinobi world by the storm. At least Sasuke will be happy, especially when his Ni-san starts playing matchmaker. Itachi had to admit, for whatever bullshit Kabuto had spewed or done before, he had done one good thing now, as Itachi hadn't felt this good in years. Ever since he got ill, there was always a dull pain somewhere in his body, unrelenting and merciless, but now there was none as he traveled at top speed towards Konoha. It felt strange to be alive again when he knew his body had finally succumbed after many years, both to the illness and to the injuries Sasuke had inflicted during their heated fight. He had been so proud of his little brother becoming as strong as he had, even though he disapproved the method. He wouldn't have been happier if Sasuke simply hadn't went to Orochimaru for power, but he guessed that was his fault. He should have found a way to make his brother stronger without giving Sasuke the idea that it was okay to sacrifice his life, health, safety and happiness for the sake of killing him. That had not been his intention at all. But the snake Sannin was gone, for now. Itachi wasn't stupid enough to think it was that easy to get rid of Orochimaru. That's right, he thought it was too easy. He had seen how desperate Orochimaru was to find immortality, and he doubted that body transfer technique was the only one he had up his sleeve to cheat death. It simply wouldn't be like the Sannin to rely so heavily on one jutsu when he was obsessed with learning all jutsus known to man, and the man had even spent years making his own jutsus. Yes, the possibility of Orochimaru still being around was very high. Itachi knew that, although temporary, this time without Orochimaru must be used wisely. Until that snake came back, he had to deal with Tobi and the plans he had for his precious foolish little brother. The man had gone too far, had crossed that one final line that Itachi had drawn the day he had joined the Akatsuki: don't mess with Sasuke. That one simple rule had been followed by everyone, probably because he had made it with blood still drenching his Anbu uniform after he killed his entire clan save Sasuke. Although not everyone saw him like that, Deidara and Hidan he helped recruit, so they saw him for the first time as a young teenager in the Akatsuki robes, kicking their asses when they decided they wanted to kill him or simply show him who's better. No matter when or how the members first saw him, they knew Sasuke was off limits, yet first Orochimaru and now Tobi dared lay their hands on him. Itachi hadn't been able to do anything about this in the past. With Orochimaru, he had been sick, and the reason why Sasuke went to the snake and he was dead when Tobi made his move, but he wasn't going to let this continue now. Not by a long shot. It was not often a person got a second chance at life, and Itachi didn't plan on wasting it. He was going to make it up to Sasuke no matter what he had to do. And he will have to start by bringing Sasuke home, to his friends in his village. Together, they could begin rectifying everything they had wronged against Konoha while these new generations tried to make it up to them. It was a time of change, and not just in Konoha. Itachi was planning on taking on the entire shinobi world. There were a lot of changes to be made, starting with the treatment and fighting for Jinchuriki and Uchiha eyes. So he had quickly searched through Kabuto's lair after using Amaterasu to burn the gray-haired man's essence he had sealed away in a jar, finding a set of clothes suitable enough for travel. He can't wait to get back to Konoha and finally dress in one of his clan's shirts. It had been too long for that. His last shirt he had grown out of by the age of 15 and he had kept the symbol from the back as a memento, but no doubt Deidara had burned it as soon as news of his death reached the group. However, he hadn't immediately left. He had stopped at a mirror and allowed his eyes to bleed into Sharingan Red and then into Mangekyo Sharingan. Again, he had been surprised that there was no stinging or any discomfort. He even manifested the Susanoo fully, but nothing. And his eyes hadn't bled when he had used Amaterasu. Kabuto had found him a set of Uchiha eyes and had transplanted them, giving him the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Deciding to search through the man's research before leaving, and getting something to eat. He was famished. Itachi had read over each document he found and it brought him up to speed as well as it informed him of just what lengths Kabuto had went to get himself the perfect body Orochimaru hadn't managed to obtain. Itachi had been left reeling at the revelation that he had Uchiha Madara's eyes. Eyes that had already been blessed, cursed by the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Damn, he hadn't been expecting that. But, still, he got over it, got some food and water before exiting the cave, letting Amaterasu burn everything inside and then having Susanoo destroy the cave itself. The research Kabuto had made in there, to bring someone completely back to life like he had Itachi, was dangerous. Humans were not meant to live more than one life or for an eternity. They were flawed and life only had a meaning if it was lived once and lived right. Itachi would have to do his best not to waste this unique chance and do right by his brother this time around. He was going to be the big brother Sasuke had always needed him to be. It was time he brought down the old council and it would seem Sasuke had made the first step. It was up to Itachi to make the finishing moves. Itachi was brought out of his thoughts when he felt another presence coming his way. He was fairly close to the village at this point and he was actually quite surprised that he hadn't ran in any of the usually patrolling Anbu or Jonin. This was the first ninja that he had sensed since he left the cave yesterday afternoon. Then again, a lot of drama was going on, if Kabuto's information was anything to go by. All shinobi must have been dispersed all around the borders or outposts so they could guard their villages and countries. And Kabuto's hideout had been pretty well hidden. This really was the first trained chakra signature that Itachi had felt and he recognized the general pattern pretty well. A Hyuga, why would a Hyuga be this far out in the woods? The elder Uchiha thought, making a shadow clone and hiding himself. He followed the clone and, after another mile, they came upon a Hyuga all right. Hyuga Neji, to be more precise, and the younger genius came at Itachi's clone with Byakugan blazing in his Juken stance, ready to attack the clone. Itachi allowed his clone to activate his Sharingan and he observed the Hyuga's moves as the teen attacked him. He could sense the boy was angry and eager to spill blood, but he didn't strike Itachi to be in a necessarily killing mood. But those Juken moves were deadly and Itachi was still in a famished state, easily tired and still all out unused to being alive again. One would think that it was easy to come back to life. Well, you would be wrong if you thought that. It's like losing a limb, it hurts and it should be irreversible, even with the strongest healers in the world. It would be a miracle if someone could reattach it and you could move like you did before. In this reasoning, Itachi didn't include most of the Akatsuki members. It was a proven fact everyone in that organization had been a freak of nature, Itachi not excluded. After all, as many of his former colleges often joked or mocked him, how could anyone be as perfect as Itachi? Deciding enough was enough, as he will need to eat again soon and that included hunting and using up even more energy. Itachi dispelled his clone and watched as Neji whirled around, looking for him. Landing deftly behind him, the Uchiha easily blocked the world kick aimed at his head and pushed away the open palm that headed towards his chest. Byakugan may give Neji a 360 degrees view range in over 50 miles radius, but Itachi was a taijutsu master as much as a master of genjutsu and at this close range, when Itachi had a jump on him, Neji didn't have the space nor the balance for his fancy kicks and hits. And Itachi's Sharingan was the perfect weapon against Byakugan. While he still couldn't see the exact locations of chakra points like the White Eyes could, his clan's Dujutsu could catch even the slightest movements. He could predict every move Neji will make seconds before he could make it, because his body gave the teen away. The two geniuses fought for a few more minutes until Itachi finally got bored and allowed his Sharingan to switch to the Mangekyo Sharingan. While Byakugan couldn't be as easily deceived by Genjutsu as the rest of the world's eyes, it was not meant to be paired up against the powerful Genjutsu of the Sharingan, especially not against the Mangekyo. And so it ended when Neji looked at Itachi's eyes and was forced into a Genjutsu that knocked him out a second later. He fell to the ground with a thud and Itachi relaxed his body, allowing his eyes to judge whether the younger genius was truly knocked out or not. It had been a grand battle between them, as was befitting the status as the greatest geniuses in their families ever born. None could match Itachi's visual prowess, talent and general genius in the Uchiha clan, a clan of geniuses, while Neji had the strongest eyes of the Hyuga clan and immense talent for Juken. Against anyone else, they were unbeatable, but when faced against each other, Itachi's experience and sheer talent and ingenious made the fight unfair towards Neji. Itachi had never been defeated. He could actually count on one hand the amount of times someone had landed a single hit on him. And even half of that was a stray punch delivered to his clones. He wasn't counting his fight against Sasuke in this, as his fight against Sasuke was his fight against Sasuke. It went into a whole new category that belonged only to it. The elder Uchiha sighed as he stared at the unconscious man on the ground before him. It was interesting how he always had to look over someone. When he was a kid, it was Sasuke, then when he became an Anbu, that included whole of Konoha, too. Then he had to look after his goofy Akatsuki partner, Kisame, and now he was saddled with watching over the Hyuga he had fought and knocked out. He must be destined to look after someone. Itachi snorted. Great. Now I'm rambling about destiny like the Hyugas do. Just great. Who would have thought that dying and coming back to life could be this troublesome? Itachi's left eyebrow twitched as he realized what he had just thought. It would seem that it wasn't just his body that needed to get used to living again, but his brain, too. Deciding he needed food before he made some stupid mistake unbefitting a former Anbu captain, Itachi went out for a quick hunt and brought back 2 rabbits, figuring it only polite to feed his unsuspected captive, since he had knocked him out in the first place. He spent the minutes needed to roast the rabbits in silence, letting his mind wander. He had left a special crow with Naruto-kun, for the possibility of Sasuke trying to fight him with Itachi's eyes. The crow had the left eye of his dearest friend, Uchiha Shisui, that the man himself had given it to him for the benefit of Konoha's protection before omitting suicide. That had been a few months before Itachi had massacred his entire clan. A shiver ran down his spine when he remembered his parents' last words as those heavy tears had rolled down his face. His Chichiwa had kept the dignity and pride befitting the Uchiha clan's head, but that had cost him his head and both of his sons' innocence. Sasuke became an avenger, willing to give up and betray everything just so he could kill Itachi. And Itachi became an S-class criminal. He joined Akatsuki and he observed them for years, making sure that they don't do anything that will overly damage Konoha. He will need to get that crow with Shisui's eye from Naruto-kun. That's why he was heading back towards his home village. He would have just snuck in and took back the bird while going unnoticed. But he had not expected the Hyuga to be here. From the looks of his attire, he had been out for training and his eyes must have caught sight of Itachi. Now Itachi had no choice but to drag the teen along until he got back his crow, and then he was off to find Sasuke and to give him a piece of his mind. He had reprimanded Sasuke only a couple of times in their lives, and if he had to start doing so now, he will drag Sasuke back to Konoha by his ear so he could have a good, long talk with his foolish little brother with a revenge affinity. The moan brought his gaze to the slowly waking up Neji, and Itachi watched as the Hyuga blinked groggily at the fire in front of him and the rabbits cooking over it. The smell must have reached his nose because the long-haired brunette's stomach growled loudly, demanding the delicious-smelling food in front of him. Itachi chuckled and an impressive pink flush dusted Neji's pale cheeks. "What's so funny, bastard?" The genius growled at the raven-haired man. "Relax, I mean you no harm," Itachi said in a placating voice, but Neji just snorted. "Yeah, right, that's why you knocked me out. You attacked me," Itachi said with an unimpressed expression on his face. "Are you surprised, Uchiha? Please." The white eyes rolled and Itachi's brow furrowed. The Hyuga was acting strange. Not that Itachi personally knew Neji, it just left him feeling as though Neji wasn't quite talking, well, to him, but rather someone else. You nearly killed Naruto for the third time and you would have gladly killed Sakura if it hadn't been for Naruto. Then you just ran off with that Madara madman. You really expect me to be all buddy-buddy with you, Sasuke? Ah, this is what felt wrong. Itachi thought in his mind and sighed. Neji-kun, what makes you think I am my Ototo? Involving the dead, when are you going to stop falling, Sasuke? You've already fallen so low. There's not much lower you can go. Neji-kun, Itachi tried to interrupt but the usually unsocial teen was on a roll, only making Itachi's usually infinite patience thin more and more. He wasn't the type to blow a gasset, but if the white-eyed male continued, Itachi just might. And oh joy, he really wasn't shutting up. I'm actually starting to wonder if you'll break rock bottom and go right through. I bet you even. That's enough, Hyuga, Itachi finally snapped, but it wasn't how a normal person would snap. His voice remained the same and the only indication that he was pissed that existed in the outwards world was the red eyes now looking at Neji with a slight glare. But what really made him scary when pissed was the world he created around him and the person who pissed him off. Tsukuyomi was not something anyone would like experiencing. Itachi knew, as all of the Akatsuki members, save Kisame, who knew not to mess with his partner due to having seen what the younger man can do, had experienced it at least once and they tried their best not to experience it again. As predicted, Neji shut his tarp and stared wide eyes at the man now surrounded with crows, their eyes red and glowing, as if they were ready to swoop in and feed on his remains after Itachi kills him. The thought made the brunette shiver and sealed his lips shut. Nope, he was not going to die like this. At least he now knew this was not Sasuke. Sasuke had a rather explosive temper these days, or so he had heard. This man was far too calm to be Sasuke, yet the resemblance between them could only come from a familial relation. That alone had made him assume this must be Itachi. He had seen his picture only a couple of times, or Sasuke trying to scare people and stir things up by making panic over a ghost spread, but now that Neji thought about it, Sasuke wasn't exactly subtle like that. That was probably the only occasion under which Sasuke would completely lose his cool and act without thinking it through. So this must be the famed Uchiha Itachi, the clan killer. Neji thought, observing the older male. But didn't the reports say that he's dead? How is he back? What is he doing here? Yes, I was dead. Kabuto did something I will not discuss with anyone beyond saying it healed my body and returned my soul into it. And I'm here to see Naruto-kun. I left something important with him. He ignored the now gaping Jonin as the S-class criminal casually turned the rabbits. Medium rare or well done? Medium. It was supposed to be an answer but Neji was a till creeped out that Itachi had known his questions without him even voicing them. Was he some sort of mind reader? I'm not. A mind reader, that is. Itachi answered as he handed Neji the rabbit. And no, it's not poisoned. If I wanted you dead, I could have killed you while you were out of it. Right. Neji awkwardly accepted the meat and watched as Itachi formed the seals for a fire jutsu and blew a small, weak fireball at his meat, accelerating its cooking quite a bit. Such chakra control, he thought before shaking his head. Then, if not, why did you know what I was going to say? He held still as Itachi reached for his own food. Neji was surprised he hadn't been tied up but with how easily the other could overpower him, Neji guessed it wasn't necessary. Damn it. Even when he reached the top of the ladders, and Uchiha was already standing there, taunting him. At least this particular Uchiha wasn't rubbing it in his nose like his snotty little brother would. My little brother is foolish, not snotty, and I know because you keep thinking. As soon as humans learn how to talk, their mouths are making almost invisible motions of speech even when they are only thinking the words. Itachi replied calmly as he blew on his food before taking a small bite. The Sharingan can catch these slight movements and read them. My Sharingan just so happens to be sharper than most people expect it to be. I see. Neji decided he will have to teach himself to read those same motions with his Byakugan. It'd probably be harder, as his eyes didn't automatically translate everything like the Sharingan did so effortlessly. But why do you want to go after Naruto now? You have a second chance at life and you're going to waste it by going after the Kyuubi again. Itachi smiled a small, slightly sad smile. No, I don't want to hurt Naruto-kun. I never did, or else he'd probably be dead by now. Neji narrowed his eyes suspiciously at the raven-haired man before taking a bite out of his meal and then going back to business. Then why didn't you ever do it? Because Naruto-kun is Sasuke's first, one and only real friend. The smile on Itachi's face was almost cheerful now. For 6 years, they have shared a special bond. And I'm counting on Naruto-kun and that bond to rehabilitate Sasuke after I bring him back home. Wait, what? The Hyuga was confused. Itachi guessed he would be, too, had he been in his situation. After all, he had hunted Naruto more than once and yet here he was saying he won't hurt Naruto and that he'll bring Sasuke home. The blind was either going to be excited or angry. You never could tell with Naruto. You're bringing Sasuke back. Yeah, I think it's time we have a little chat, Itachi said, slowing down in his eating now that the original hunger had subsided. He hoped this ended by the end of the week. He usually wasn't one for big meals to begin with, but his body demanded the substance it had lacked in death. Sasuke already knows the truth, or so Naruto tells me. Itachi let out a startled laugh at that. Neji looked at him as though he were crazy. Then again, he had killed his entire clan in one night. It was bound to have messed him up, even if only for a little bit. Oh, no. I mean, yes, we'll have to talk about that, but I really wanted to talk to him about Naruto's obvious little crush on him that he's been avoiding to admit exists. Naruto doesn't have a crush on Sasuke, the Hyuga protested, hoping for Hinata-sama's sake that it was true. The poor girl had loved Naruto for years. It would devastate her, no doubt. They're just friends. Itachi, for the first time that he can remember, rolled his eyes. Right, and Toby really is Uchiha Madara. The sarcasm was rolling off his tongue so thickly Neji wondered if the Uchiha considered him stupid. Then it registered what the other said and he gaped. Itachi saw his look and scoffed. Really, was he really the only logically thinking one in the whole of Konoha? It was as if half of their smarts left with him or something. And Naruto needn't worry, Sasuke's had a crush on him since they were genin. Then why did he try to kill him? Neji nearly yelled the question and Itachi sighed in a defeated manner. I don't honestly know, but maybe that's my fault, too. Neji stared at him for a moment when the other didn't elaborate before shaking his head. So now what? Now, I go back to Konoha and get what I need. They're not going to let you through the gates. The younger pointed out and Itachi resisted another eye roll. I don't need the gates to get in. A moment of silence passed between them before Neji spoke up once more. You do realize that Naruto's somehow going to find out you're there and then make you take him with you on your Sasuke hunt, right? Itachi just smirked in a way that made him look even more handsome. I know, I'm counting on it. Neji sighed and massaged the bridge of his nose. This was going to be one hell of a long day and he got up, early, too. Damn. 30 Chapter 4, The Return of Itachi. Summary. Exactly as the title says. Someone finds Itachi's remains and start experimenting. It all ends in Itachi coming back to life and he's about to take the shinobi world by the storm. At least Sasuke will be happy, especially when his Ni-san starts playing matchmaker. Is this really necessary? Sasuke asked for the 5th time in the last 20 minutes and Kisame was wondering how come an Uchiha was acting in such a manner when he always thought of them as pricks that acted all polite and proper. But then again, no Uchiha had ever been carried over a broad shoulder like a sack of potatoes while they were preparing themselves to enter Konohagakure any minute now. It must be embarrassing, to say the least. Especially for someone who was as arrogant as Sasuke. Kisame snorted, tightening his grip. Quite frankly, Sasuke-chan, I don't know you well enough to trust you that you won't run off at the first chance presented to you. As he felt the teen stiffen, the shark dude couldn't hold in a laugh. Don't take it personally, you have to see where I'm coming from. You left your own village and crush, and spluttering ensued once again, making the blue man grin further. Behind for power from a man who wasn't even likely to follow through with whatever deal you made. Judging from the way he treated Itachi-san, I'm guessing he was after your body or something. Yeah, he was after Sasuke's body alright, if you get what I mean. And Suigetsu was enjoying this way too much for his own good. Sasuke trembled with repressed rage as the albino kept laughing. Damn, he was going to kill that water freak when all of this was over. He would rather face severe punishment than have Suigetsu meet Naruto in person. The two loudmouths would without a doubt get along really great, and then Suigetsu was going to blurt out all the things that have happened since Kisame stepped in front of them at the bridge. He would not let the blonde know about just how Kisame got him to come back. Especially since he was bound to find out soon enough, if Sasuke is accepted back into the village, that is, when he starts asking for things Sasuke would normally disapprove of but would be giving into anyway. Naruto didn't need even more sway or power over him than he already had. Anyway, why did you decide to do this? I mean, you have no connection to Konoha or to Sasuke. Why risk execution or imprisonment over a dead guy? Sasuke paused in his struggling to first glare at Suigetsu for the way the moron addressed his brother, and then he turned his attention to Kisame's answer when Karen did him the favor and smacked the purple-eyed boy over the head with a hard fist. Well, I am just very loyal to Itachi-san. We were close. You calling him with a honorific denies that, though. Karen pointed out while straightening out her glasses. Kisame looked over his free shoulder at her with a glare on his face. I just happen to really respect Itachi-san. I respect him as a fighter, as a person, and as a philosopher. If I didn't know his actual age, I would have thought him like some sort of immortal or something, and that he just liked looking 13 at the time I met him. I also respect how much he was ready to give up for his village and for those he loved. I respect all of that, and I would be calling him with Dono, but that had made him uncomfortable because of what he had done to protect those things and that person he cared for. Ni-san, Sasuke mumbled when he heard this, and coupled with the road he was now very familiar with, causing his heart to throb in pain. How different would things have been if Itachi had simply taken him along or ran away with him while their clan was still planning the coup? He bet it wouldn't have hurt this much. Still doesn't explain your loyalty to a dead man, Suigetsu said, cutting through the thick tension like Kubikirocho would through butter. Sasuke's head snapped up, Michikyo Sharingan blazing in the afternoon sun like two garnets, startling Suigetsu into taking a step back, tripping up Karen, who yelped really loudly as she bumped into Jugo. The two fell to the ground loudly enough for the birds in the nearby trees to fly away in fright, probably alerting anyone on patrol that something strange was going on in the forest. Kisame reacted just in time to stop Sasuke from lunging at the stupid boy with Kusanagi half out by pinning him harder against his shoulder. How dare you say that about Itachi? You never even met him. I'll kill you, you bastard. Sasuke let out in a frightening hiss that Manda would be proud of, no doubt. Team Taka just nodded their heads, despite only Suigetsu having been the one to say anything about the older Uchiha. While I would have personally ripped you apart for saying that about Itachi-san any other day, I am too busy holding Minachi here to do so. But don't say it again or I will personally show you a hell not even Tsukiyomi can make. Got it. Once again, all three teenagers nodded before scrambling to their feet. Good, now let's get going. We are almost at the gate. They all nodded once again and followed after him while Sasuke allowed his Sharingan to completely fade before letting himself think about all that is awaiting him in Konoha. Tsunade will supposedly forgive him, but that's only if he can get Naruto to do so first, and seeing as he had tried to kill the blonde multiple times, that forgiveness might not be offered anymore as it had been a few months ago. Sakura definitely won't forgive him. He had seen just how much her care for Naruto had escalated in the time he had spent away from Konoha. Everyone from Rookie 9 must hate him by now, if they could even remember what he looked like. Team Guy had never been particularly close to Team 7 while he was still in Konoha, but he heard a lot of things had changed. There was really no one waiting for him there. His entire family and clan had diminished to just him. He had never had any friends outside his teammates, and he doubted even Kakashi or Iruka-sensei would welcome him back, and he had been to Kakashi almost what Naruto was to Iruka, even if the Jonin didn't make it too obvious. After all, he wouldn't have taught Sasuke and Sasuke only his Chidori had he not cared for the younger of the two Uchihas he had worked with. He could have taught it to Itachi, too, but he didn't. The council will no doubt want him executed, since he had killed Danzo and had attacked the 5 cages at the 5 Cage Summit. But what really bothered him was that he really might have destroyed the bond he had tried so hard to sever. If he had managed to make Naruto hate him, Sasuke decided he would kill himself. He had no place otherwise. His home was Naruto now and only Naruto. If he was rejected there, he had nowhere to go, and if he had nowhere to go, it will be just like when he was a kid and he didn't want to go home because there was no one there to welcome him. Finally, Suigetsu almost yelled when they were now in front of the gates, startling Sasuke out of his thoughts. He looked up and saw that they were, indeed, at the gates, two Chunin staring at them in horror while a big group was standing in front of their post, obviously waiting the papers for entering the village. The Uchiha felt his heart stop when he caught a glimpse of orange, pink and green. He would die before he could lose sight of Naruto, Sakura or Rock Lee in a crowd. He then noticed something purple beside Sakura from his peripheral vision and knew that it must be Ino. The black-dressed, pale person sent his temper high-rocketing, but he wouldn't do anything to that replacement now. He had finally gotten back. He was not going to be thrown out before he could at least apologize to Naruto. Not so loud, Baka, Karen hissed, kicking Suigetsu into his lower back and making him stumble, the sound of his big sword hitting the ground along with him drawing the attention of the gathered group. Sasuke wondered if he had paled even further when he saw almost all of Rookie 9 and Lee and Tenten were there, staring at, as far as they could tell, an Akatsuki attack force sent to attack them, with one being carried like a sack of dirty clothes. "This is so humiliating," the Raven muttered to Jugo, who gave his leader a sympathetic smile that didn't help him any. "Bastards, what are you doing here?" Predictably, Naruto and Kiba were the first ones to open their mouths, and Sasuke automatically rolled his eyes, and Kisame looked startled when he felt the broody teenager relax. Still as loud and as obnoxious as always, Dobi. Silence reigned after that simple, short sentence, awkwardness making Karen and Jugo fidget while Suigetsu was dusting himself off and drinking some of his water with a straw. Kisame suddenly wondered if this was such a bright idea. Finally, Naruto took a step forward, no one knowing how to react to the all-too-familiar voice and the even more familiar insult that was allowed to be said only by the owner of said voice. "Sasuke." The blonde moved towards Kisame, the blue man not moving for fear of it being taken as a threat or attack. A tanned hand gripped a kunai as a warning while Naruto circled around to see the face of the source of the familiar voice. Blue eyes widened comically when he was greeted by black, for once, not glaring blue ones set in a pale, handsome face of the person he had searched and trained for 3 years. Unbidden, happy and relieved tears sprang to his eyes, and Naruto for once had no shame in whipping them away as he stared at his best friend. A huge grin spread across his whiskered cheeks, making the knot in Sasuke's stomach ease up considerable as he jumped onto Kisame's back so he could hang off of Sasuke's neck in an overly happy hug. "Sasuke, you're back. TCH, Uzuratonkachi." The Uchiha huffed, his ears still ringing even as he buried his face in Naruto's neck, already feeling at home in the blonde's presence. He enjoyed his scent, a scent he had gotten so used to on their missions together and that he had then secretly missed when he left. A scent he hadn't dared forget, no matter what, even as he trained to get stronger, grew to be harder and colder, emotionless. Alone. Yet he will never really be alone if Naruto is still alive, now will he? "Sasuke-kun." Sakura suddenly appeared, tackling Kisame from the front, and then sigh, because his teammates were doing it, he figured why not. And Ino joined in, then Lee, and Kisame was starting to wonder if these Leaf Shinobi were crazy or something, despite his partner being from Konoha, too. Itachi was probably just an exception, anyway. "You're back, I'm so glad." "Welcome back," Ino said, holding on just as tightly as her best friend. "We missed you, Sasuke-kun." Lee happily cried and nuzzled the raven, making Sasuke's eyebrow twitch, and before they knew it, everyone, including poor Kisame, were on the ground. Except Naruto, who Sasuke had held to his side. Or maybe it had been Naruto who had refused to let go. No one could tell, not even the two boys themselves. All they knew was that Naruto was still holding on to Sasuke for dear life, and the older teen wasn't complaining. "Geez, still as much of a jerk as ever, I see," Kiba said as he and the now very, very big Akamaru made their way over towards to the stunned group. Team Taka could not believe that their leader came from a village with people this touchy-feely or go-lucky. If it had been any of them who had done this, they would have received a kusanagi to the gut or a chidori to the heart. So not fair, or so Karen thought. What are you doing here? Shikamaru had the sense to ask, keeping a wary eye on the returned Uchiha, now really the very last one beside the madman Madara. Shino and Choji kept silent at his side while Hinata stayed with Tenten in the back, both Kunoichi observing the handsome boy with sharp and untrusting eyes. Sasuke regarded them with bored eyes while Kisame kept his own gaze on the two Chunin who were staring at him warily. Ah, they must have fought someone from the Akatsuki and barely survived. That would explain it. Karen was glaring at Sakura while Suigetsu sized Kiba up, the two trying to decide who was the alpha dog as they moved in circles around each other, Lee getting dizzy watching them and needing Jugo to hold him up. It was Hinata's quiet but demanding voice that brought their attention back to the matter at hand. What have you done with Neji Ni-san? Black Eyes looked at her as if she were a crazy annoyance he would rather not deal with. And maybe she was, Sasuke hadn't quite decided yet with her. What? You did something to Neji Ni-san, didn't you? Why else would he disappear so suddenly just before you came back? Question mark. What did you do to him? Hinata demanded, screaming at the top of her lungs, Byakugan activating and lunging at the Uchiha. An open palm made to hit him, but Kisame easily took out Samahata and blocked the two boys from sight and harm. Hinata, seeing the sucking properties of the sword, stopped before it could absorb her chakra. She still glared at where she could see the Uchiha through the sword, but he didn't seem affected and it had nothing to do with the fact that he couldn't see her glaring. Do you honestly think I came all the way from the land of the waves in one day to return to Konoha, just to mess up my meek chances of being accepted back by getting into and winning a piss fight with Neji? If so, then you are seriously delusional or mentally challenged. Not even Naruto would think that. Or Suigetsu, for that matter. Hey! The two mentioned boys yelled in protest, making Sasuke snort, which in turn seemed to terrify his new teammates. The Konoha shinobi stared at them as though they were retarded, since they looked like they were expecting Sasuke to breathe fire like a dragon or something. Then again, Uchihas do have an affinity towards fire. Naruto turned back to his returned teammate and stared him in the eyes, as if trying to read into his very soul, making Sasuke want to fidget. Finally, after a moment of silence, the blonde spoke. So, you haven't even caught a glimpse of Neji? Following you maybe? That's impossible, Kisame stated confidently. My tracking and sensory skills are almost unmatchable and from what I know, Karen, he pointed to said redhead, who waved. And Jugo, he said, next pointing to the tallest teen in their group. Have excellent mastery of them, too. Tenten snorted, crossing her arms over her white-clad chest as she walked up to Kisame boldly and jabbed a finger at his chest hard enough that it was definitely going to leave a bruise. So what? Neji's a genius. If there's anyone who could evade all three of your detections, then it's him. Then why didn't he attack? Jugo's question was ignored as Kisame swiped away the little girl's offending finger with an annoyed frown and a twitching left brow. Listen here, girlie, as I'm about to break your little bubble of obliviousness. Tenten opened her mouth to protest or retort, but the blue man wasn't going to give her the chance. I have lived, traveled and trained with an unmatched genius for 6 years. I know, for a fact, that only Itachi-san can find me and that's mostly because he knows for what to look for. But I also know for a fact that I can find everyone but Itachi-san, if he's really giving it even half his effort. So just back off. Well, it's very obvious Neji's going to match him easily, then. Especially since he's got his Byakugan, the Chinese girl said confidently. So what, if Itachi-san were still alive, it wouldn't have mattered if he had Rinnegan. Leader felt intimidated by Itachi-san. And let's not forget that your little genius fell short in front of who? Kidomaru. That's pathetic. He was only 13 then. Tenten insisted. So what? Itachi-san was an Anbu captain at 13 and he joined the order when he was 11. He got his Sharingan at 8 and mastered it in a matter of months. He graduated from the academy when he was only turning 7 and he entered the Chunin exams, alone, when he was 10 and became a Chunin all on his own. Sai and Naruto let out whistles while Kiba could only utter an impressed, damn, while Kisame went on. And let's not forget he defeated an entire clan of geniuses in a Sannin when he was 13, too. So your genius falls rather short, either way. The weapons mistress sputtered for a few moments, everyone so intent on watching the two fight over who's better that they never noticed two more figures joining in on their rather strange group. Ma, what's going on here? Kakashi asked, not looking up from his book. He hadn't sensed any danger from the group, so he had assumed that it was one of their usual fights. But Yamato had seen, and he was trying to tug Kakashi's book out of his hands so that the Jonin would look up, but the silver-haired man just insistently kept the book in place. They're trying to decide who's a better genius, Neji or Itachi. Choji happily informed the two adults while Shikamaru just teased at their antics. What brought this on? Kakashi blinked, looking down at Choji, who he was standing by. Well, Hinata-san accused Sasuke-kun of being the reason Neji-san hadn't yet returned from his training this morning. Sasuke. Kakashi interrupted Sai's explanation and finally looked at their guests incredulously, instantly noticing that Sasuke and Naruto seemed to be joined at the hip. Rather strange, if you think about it. After all, Sasuke was still dressed in his Akatsuki clothes, and Akatsuki hunted people like Naruto. Not to mention that Sasuke had tried killing Naruto more than once. When did they get here? Some 10 minutes ago, Shikamaru answered lazily, but still never taking his eyes off of Sasuke, since he had Naruto by his side. Especially since Kisame was there, too. If this was some sort of trick, all they'd have to do was run, Naruto already in their possession. Well, run and tie the blonde up. No doubt Naruto will fight them and try dragging Sasuke back into Konoha. Do you know why they're here? Yamato asked, also watching Sasuke and Naruto. Ino shook her head as she joined them. Hinata accused Sasuke-kun before he could even begin responding. We can only guess now. He came back because that's his older bros will or something. Suigetsu muttered, not daring say anything bad about Itachi again after the reactions he got last time. He was not nearly as suicidal as everyone pegged him to be. Because it was Itachi's will. Kakashi repeated, not quite believing his own ears. Team Taka nodded, since it was obvious their leader was a little too preoccupied with feeling up his blonde best friend. Really, those two looked to be in a world of their own. How come he changed his mind? Kisame-senpai used some sort of reverse psychology or something. Suigetsu said with a shrug. Karen copied the action, said something about Itachi not being happy with Sasuke destroying Konoha. He also mentioned a person named Naruto. Jugo added, watching the birds fly overhead. It was a flock of crows, which somewhat surprised Jugo. They hadn't seen much crows at all, yet there was an entire flock here. Figures he came back for that idiot. Kiba said, his hands behind his head, still occasionally looking between the two still arguing about Itachi and Neji. Never thought that big guy would be an Uchiha's lapdog. More like guard dog, Karen muttered, remembering all the threats he gave just for insulting Itachi. Sasuke really changed his mind only because Naruto and Sasuke were mentioned. Kakashi asked, incredulous, not really sure what to think about that. Really? A voice behind them asked, and Suigetsu rolled his purple eyes. Yeah, geez, you'd think with how obsessed he was with him it wouldn't be so surprising. Especially since he realized his bond with his brother was one of his two most significant bonds. Karen said with a sigh. Do you think the other is with this Naruto person? No way, Jugo. The other one is with me, obviously. The glasses-wearing girl said, only to get punched viciously by a very angry Sakura. Bitch, what was that for? And just like that, another fight ensued. We chased him for 3 years and all we'd have had to do was tie Naruto and Itachi up and dangle them for Sasuke to take as bait. Yamato questioned to himself when another voice behind them spoke again, and they turned around this time, greeted with a sight that stopped both fights. Then why the hell didn't he just come back? Neji yelled loudly enough that maybe even his ancestors heard him, startling Kisame and Tenten out of their fight. Sakura and Karen stopped fighting when everyone stopped talking, staring at the space next to Neji, and the two girls looked up too, to see what had stopped all commotion. Their jaws dropped when they saw the two long-haired geniuses the other two had been fighting about, staring at them with two very shocked expressions, only Neji's was mixed with disbelief and aggravation while Itachi looked like he was over the moon with happiness. And awkward silence fell over the entire group, Neji and Itachi staring at Team Taka, Team Guy, Rookie 9, Sai and the two Jonin and two Chunin, while said larger group was staring at the two pale individuals they had been discussing. Only for it to be broken when a blur suddenly latched itself onto Itachi, glomping the older Uchiha, almost as if out of nowhere. But Itachi seems to have been expecting it because his arms easily came up to hug his dearest little brother close to himself, enjoying being able to hold Sasuke like this again after 6 years. Sasuke was shaking against him, his face buried into Itachi's neck and his cheek pressed tightly against his older brother's pulse, listening and feeling to the proof of his Nissan's presence in life. He held on tightly, afraid that if he let go, Itachi would disappear, like in so many of his dreams these nights. And Itachi had no qualms about it. He was just content to hold his little brother close. After all the pain he had put Sasuke through, the younger Uchiha deserved whatever he wished for, and it would seem holding onto his older brother was all he needed. The thought made Itachi extremely happy and his sighed happily as he patted Sasuke's head to comfort the boy. "Ni-san," Sasuke murmured into Itachi's ear, tightening his hold a little more, earning himself that wonderful chuckle he hadn't heard for so long. It felt a lot longer than just the 6-7 years they have been apart. "Ni-san. I'm back, Sasuke. If you want, I think today would be a nice day to teach you a jutsu," Itachi said with a gentle smile, and he felt a tear slide down his neck. He tightened his own hold on Sasuke, not believing he could actually do this. This was really happening. He was really back in the world of the living and he was really holding his little brother again. That somehow made it all seem worth it, all the pain, the sickness and the hardships. He buried his own face in his little brother's hair, breathing in his scent. "I'm sorry. I am so sorry. For so many things, Ototo." "Don't," the younger of the two choked out, still not letting go of his brother. In fact, he was still wrapped around Itachi like a monkey, holding onto him with both arms and legs. It would have been comical had the sight not been so hard-moving. It took them a whole of 10 minutes to calm down enough for Sasuke to let go of his brother, yet both Uchiha stayed very close, observing the changes in each other. Sasuke, of course, noticed that his brother's eyes weren't the same, and Itachi was happy to note that his own eyes had stopped Sasuke from going blind. The permanent frowns that had been on their faces for the past 7 years slipped off, and both brothers enjoyed their first genuine smiles and small laughs in just as longer still for Itachi. When they felt two presences approaching, they surprised Naruto and Kisame with two smiles. Naruto instantly grinned back at Sasuke, a light pink dusting his cheeks, while Kisame muttered something about falling in love all over again. Itachi just chuckled at his partner and his bluntness when the two teens registered what the blue man had said, and a Chidori immediately appeared in Sasuke's left hand. Had it not been for Naruto to hold him back and calm him down, especially when the older of the two former Akatsuki swooped in to kiss his partner passionately enough to make even Kakashi blush, Kisame would have been dead by now. Instead, Sasuke settled for standing really close to the blonde while he growled at every move Kisame made. Itachi, of course, noticed the intimate proximity and smirked. And despite there now being tons and tons of things that need to be prepared and taken care of, the spring cleaning of the Uchiha compound, checking out Itachi's story, getting rid of the corrupt advisors, clearing Itachi's name, giving both Uchiha brothers rewards for killing Kabuto and Orochimaru, finding a place for Kisame in their ranks, studying all of the information they knew on Akatsuki, and yes, Itachi did have a smug look on his face as he explained that Uchiha Madara was still very much dead and that it was their older cousin, Kakashi's old teammate, Uchiha Obito, behind the mask of Tobi. Much to everyone's surprise and Kisame's anger for getting fooled so easily the first time he met the man, the fact that Itachi now has Uchiha Madara's already eternal Mangekyo Sharingan eyes, the Anbu escorts that will no doubt be necessary for some time, the ranks they deserve and so on, all of that official stuff that will no doubt give Tsunade a headache for a month after she is finished, Itachi still found it in himself to smirk at his younger brother. "So, Sasuke, when were you planning on bringing your boyfriend over for dinner?" The sputtering that ensued from both boys assured them that the future will be a bright one and that they will all somehow be just fine. It was a nice thing for Itachi to return to after his many years of hard work for this very peace. The days that followed in Konoha were never the same again, the village filled with laughter and excitement that many would envy them for years to come. Thank you for watching and don't forget to like and subscribe.